Hi guys, my name is Emily, and today I'm going to be talking about Me and Earl and the Dying Girl by Jessie Andrews. Now this is my second time filming the video. The first time I filmed this video, I was very upset, and I did express my reasons for being upset very clearly. I also didn't acknowledge any of the other pros about this book that I've seen discussed in other videos, because I read the book, I filmed my thoughts, I edited my thoughts, I uploaded my thoughts to YouTube private, and then I started watching other people's opinions just to see what else was out there. But now I am here to make a more well-rounded argument, so this isn't really a review, it's kind of a discussion. And so I'm probably going to insert some clips of my original rant here, because when I edited that together I did feel like I expressed myself really well in terms of my issues with Jessie Andrews' presentation of people of color in this novel. Hi guys, my name is Emily, and today I will be reviewing Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl, which is a book I picked up because I saw the trailer for the movie and I thought it looked cute, and I am experiencing all of the regrets having purchased this and read it, because I did not enjoy this at all. It sounded like a kind of cute story, the film made it look kind of cute. Our main character Greg is a somewhat privileged Jewish boy whose goal in life in high school is to be invisible. So he's not friends with anybody. He kind of just exists on the outskirts of all the groups. His theory on life in high school is that if you are friends with no one, you will also be enemies with no one. You will just be this kind of neutral entity that no one can lay claim on, so no one can hate, because you don't fit into any sort of opposing group. His life is cultivating invisibility. This all changes when one of the girls that he went to Hebrew school with ends up sick with cancer. And so his mother forces him to interact with her as kind of like a pity thing, like, oh, you guys used to hang out when you were kids when we forced you to go to Hebrew school, so you should probably go hang out with her because she's dying now. And so he goes, and they have a really meh relationship, kind of meh interactions. The whole time Greg is in this book, he is just meh. I don't think Greg really feels or thinks passionately about anything. He is just meh. He has spent so much of his time cultivating being nobody that he is nobody. And I found that really annoying. Here are my collected thoughts on Me and Earl and the Dying Girl. A pro that I have heard is that Me and Earl and the Dying Girl subverts sick-lit conventions. The person who I heard mention that Me and Earl and the Dying Girl subverts sick-lit conventions, her reference point for the conventions of sick-lit is The Fault in Our Stars, which I guess is maybe our standard now, but John Green himself was actually subverting the conventions of sick-lit when he wrote The Fault in Our Stars. The former queen of sick-lit was a lady named Lorene McDaniel. Lorene McDaniel, quote, fused illness and romance narratives to reinforce norms of able-bodiedness among American youth. So her novels always featured a sick female protagonist who only got better if she chose the able-bodied, healthy man and chose to engage in behaviors of normative femininity. So wearing a wig, wearing a headscarf, putting on makeup. The more stereotypically female this girl behaved, like basically if she lived out of 17 magazine and like behaved like 17 magazine wants you to behave, as like the perfect consumer of all of these beauty products and weird advice on how to get the boy because the boy is the only mission in life, then you are magically cured of your illness. However, if you don't engage in these conventions because you are sick, and maybe you don't want to get the boy because you're sick and you'd rather focus on yourself, and maybe you don't want to put the makeup on and buy into this artificial female norm with makeup and clothing and wigs, then you die. That is the convention of sick-lit. Basically, McDaniel's novels involve females cultivating normality by rehabilitating female beauty. In these novels, sex occurs in sanitized spaces like the hospitals, and these sex scenes remind us of these characters' disabilities and illness. We can see someone carrying on in McDaniel's tradition of sick-lit and her style of sick-lit with Jodi Picoult's My Sister's Keeper. In this novel, the sister Cait is sick with cancer, and she has sex with her boyfriend in the sanitized space of the hospital. There's that line in the movie, I'm not sure about in the book because it's been so long since I've read the book, but there's a line in the movie when they kiss and she's like, I can taste your cytoxics. So we are reminded again that both of them are sick. They're having sex in this weird sanitized hospital-y space. It's not a sexy, sensual space. And so Jodi Picoult very much follows in the footsteps of the conventional sicklet that Lorraine McDaniel started. So the person that I watched on YouTube, their reference for what sicklet is John Green's The Fault in Our Stars. Tifios is actually subverting a lot of the conventions of sicklet already. Hazel engages in a relationship with a guy that is sicker than her. In the Lorraine McDaniel novels, these women always date healthy men in order to be healthy, whereas Hazel dates a man who's actually sicker than her. So there's that subversion of the convention already, that you pull yourself out of sickness by dating someone who is well. Hazel is arguably the better one in Fault in Our Stars. She is at least stable for the time being. That magic drug that they have just keeps her stable. That's the first way that Green kind of subverted these conventions. The second way is that Hazel never really cultivated normative female appearance. It's mentioned that she has a short page boy haircut, that she's wearing baggy jeans, that she has these fat chipmunk cheeks, and we all know that the beauty gurus on the internet tell you you can totally change the shape of your face with contouring, the magic of contouring. Hazel has no interest in appearing normative. Hazel is just herself. She doesn't make herself more female to make herself feel more normative and well. That's the second way that Green has subverted the conventions of sicklet set out by McDaniels. The third way is that Hazel and Gus have sex in a hotel room. The hotel room is not a sanitized hospital space. It is a sensual space where people actually go to have sex. It's a very, very conventional place. And the focus of the sex scene is on the condomy awkwardness. I believe that is a direct quotation from this novel. So the focus is actually on the awkwardness of first-time sex opposed to their disabilities. Like, Hazel is hooked up to an oxygen tank and Augustus has an artificial leg, but neither of those things is really the focus of the scene, which is nice. In my opinion, The Fault in Our Stars is not without issues. I actually wrote 2 essays in university on my issues with Tifios. I enjoy it as a story, but there are some issues, in my opinion, with Green appropriating the voice of a young girl with a disability and writing from a perspective that he has arguably no idea what it is like to live in that body. If you would like to hear my thoughts, I could rehash my essay on Tifios. If you are interested, let me know in the comments below, but that's all I'll say on that for now. I guess the point of this is that you can kind of see how sicklet has progressed. If Tifios is now the standard that most people have in mind, and they're looking forward and subverting from the standard that Tifios sets, that's important to keep in mind. Now that we kind of have this foundation of sicklet and where it's progressed from, let's talk about Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl. Greg is the me, Earl is his best friend who is a person of color, and the dying girl, her name is Rachel. She does have a name. This is the story of Greg being forced to interact with a dying girl. This novel addresses one of my largest criticisms of Tifios in that this is written from the point of view of regular old Greg, who's not dying. He's just watching someone die. And so Jessie Andrews doesn't appropriate the voice of a sick young girl and tell us all about the experience of being sick and young and female and dying like Green does. This is an outsider's perspective on what it is like to be young and to lose someone. So there's a pro. There's a pro for this book. That there is no appropriation of voice. For the dying girl, anyways. Cons. Let's talk about the cons. Me and Earl and the Dying Girl involves a very sexist, terrible narrator named Greg. He just spends like 90% of his time objectifying women. He views these women as objects to possess and collect. And that's a little disturbing. Plus, it should also be noted that Rachel isn't really a character. She's kind of there as a plot point. She's a reason to develop Greg as a character, but she's not really developing in her own way. She is the dying girl. We don't really need her name. Then there's the fact that this book is racist. I'm not sure how to do this without being offensive, but I feel like they tried to pass off some of the things about the black characters in this book as humorous, and I thought they were offensive. Now, I am obviously not a black person, so I cannot speak to that experience, but I will share some of the highlights, and you guys can judge this for yourself. So, firstly, Greg is a very snide and sarcastic asshole, and so he says, quote, "At many schools, the jocks would be a good bet to ascend to the throne of like the social hierarchy of the school. But at Benson, they're all pretty much black, and many of the white kids are afraid of them." So, like, 3 pages in, I lie, 7 pages in, Greg tells us that everybody is afraid of the black athletes, which is interesting to me because in a masculinity studies course we took, we looked at specifically black masculinity and how within the United States, black masculinity, if it's in the form of a sports person, is a very highly regarded form of black masculinity. A lot of people, I guess, admire this specific iteration of black masculinity in the form of the athlete. I find it really weird that the black athletes are feared opposed to admired, and it was, when I read that, I was kind of taken aback because of the masculinity studies course. So that was one of the first things that I read. It made me go, we fear our black athletes. What? Where did that come from? And I feel like it's supposed to be funny. Like, Greg is supposed to be very sarcastic and dry and judgmental, but it didn't strike me as being funny. Here's another moment in the story where it felt really ugly. Quote, "Earl's home life is awesome. He basically lives unsupervised with 2 brothers, 3 half-brothers, and a dog in a huge house. They play video games and eat Domino's pizza pretty much all of the time. His mom lives in the house too, but she usually restricts herself to the 3rd floor. What she does up there is rarely discussed, especially with Earl around, but you can tell that it involves Bacardi Silver mojitos and chat rooms. Meanwhile, downstairs it's 6 guys in a house living it up. Non-stop party. What problems could there possibly be?" And so they go through these list of problems that are just kind of problematic, specifically the 13-year-old brother who is, quote, "probably the most violent and aggressive of the bunch. For example, he has a huge, painful-looking neck tattoo, spelled TRUNIGGA, next to some pictures of guns. Brandon himself owns a gun and has already managed to impregnate another human being, even though his voice hasn't dropped all the way yet." This paragraph just didn't sit right with me. And again, I am white, so I'm probably not the right person to be discussing this. Another instance. So Greg ends up in the hospital, and instead of writing out paragraphs, he makes point form lists of what everybody is saying and doing, and everybody in these lists speaks in full sentences with capitals at the beginning, punctuation at the end, except for his black friend Earl, who does not speak in full sentences, who speaks in all lowercase, like, even people's names are in all lowercase, and it's not like Greg just got tired because when his nice white dad comes in, his dad speaks in capitals with punctuation again. Some of my biggest problems with Jessie Andrews' presentation of the black characters in Me, Earl, and the Dying Girl is that, again, it seems like an appropriation of voice, especially in the way that Earl speaks. So one of the largest criticisms of The Help, which was written by a white lady, is that the black women in here speak like children. They speak like an outsider who doesn't understand that how people of color in the states at this time spoke is actually a dialect of the English language, and it's not baby talk. Like, the maids in here come off as speaking baby talk. So I read this book called The Language Instinct, and Steven Pinker talks about how there's actually a black English vernacular, and it is totally a dialect that follows its own grammatical rules. It's not just baby talk, which is kind of how Earl comes off in this book. And the fact that Earl doesn't speak in capitals or with punctuation or in full sentences makes me feel like Jessie Andrews has taken what the help is doing, someone who is writing about how this dialect sounds from the outside, and taking it to a whole new level. I don't know what to do with it. These are my collected thoughts on this book. I am still really sad that I spent any money on this, although it has given me a lot to think about. It made me go through and dig out a lot of my essays, do a little bit of research, but I have some questions for you guys. One, is the sexism and racism just Jesse Andrews writing a shitty character who is supposed to be sexist and racist? Or is it Jesse Andrews inadvertently expressing his sexist and racist ideas through the voice of Greg? Does that distinction matter in your opinion? And my second question is, if Jesse Andrews is just writing a shitty character who is supposed to be racist and supposed to be sexist, does that make it acceptable? I would be really curious to hear your thoughts on this book if you have read it, especially if you are a person of color living in the United States. I really struggled to do this review because I almost feel like it's not my place, but at the same time, it's not funny. I think that it's written to be funny. I really truly believe that the author is trying to be humorous, but it's not. And every time I came across one of these moments, it made me like the book less and less. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you soon. Bye!